Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the next session this morning at the annual Fiber Connects conference. So it's a real great pleasure for me to introduce to you our next speaker. COVID has brought us many things, some good, some not so good, but in this case, I can confirm very positive. I got to know Tim during the time of the original onslaught of the pandemic. We started working together, I think, about April this year. Tim is what is known in his circles as a digital enablement executive. That's quite a tongue twister. He works for an organization called Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator. Harambee is a not-for-profit that was founded specifically to address the youth unemployment crisis with a model that focuses on connecting employers and employees. At Harambee, Tim leads various functions, but his work focuses mainly on closing the various skills gap in the digital ecosystem in South Africa. Some of that work included the establishment of the DigiLink Digital Delivery Academy, as well as various township remote worker enablement projects. In his past life, he was responsible for taking Google's enterprise and cloud offerings to market while he was a premier partner in South Africa. And before that, he worked in the world of corporate finance and private equity. He's got an honors degree in investment management from UJ. Tim, welcome today to the session. It's a real privilege to have you, and we're really excited about this topic of Workforce 2.0. A big conversation right now, skills development, especially post this whole COVID pandemic.
Hi, Unita. I think quite a mouthful there on the introduction, so thank you for that. I'll try and keep my introduction very short so we can get onto the topic of the day. I guess what I want to leave everyone with, I think today is a set of tools that they can practically use in their sort of companies and in their personal lives, as far as just developing yourself as in digital skills or the new skills of the future that'll hold you in good stead, and hopefully just give you some insights as business leaders, as people on the ground, as to what's going on in South Africa as far as skills is going, where the gaps. Where should we be focusing on as a country, and then very practically, where should we be investing our time and energy, so that we can, both be competitive in our own organizations, but also, in a global market, I guess, which is where we have to be. So what the topic of the day, I think, was to talk a little bit about Workforce 2.0 and what's this, the next generation of skills that are required in our organizations for us to really leverage this change, be competitive, and see ourselves into the future as we digitize. And I know this word digital, which I'll get into just now, is quite a minefield as far as what people understand it to be. So we're going to focus in on very specifically the digital side of things, as we've experienced in COVID. Very quickly, companies have had to change exactly everything that they've thought was the normal, into that new swear word, which is the new normal, as they change everything that they do. They've had to get online, they've had to create online shops, they've had to work out how to use a Zoom call. All these things are enablers that everyone from the ground up of an organization has had to adapt to very quickly, just so that they can carry on servicing customers and operating as normal as they sort of used to be. So just a quick one about Harambee. So Harambee is a youth employment accelerator, like it says on its logo. And basically what Harambee's been doing for sort of 10 years now, or the best part of 10 years, is trying to pathway young unemployed youth, or now what we call work seekers, into some form of learning or earning opportunity. And like Juanita was saying just now, you know, the theory behind it is that if we can be a sort of a matchmaker in a database of unemployed youth in an economy where there is very little opportunity, and even less so now after COVID. And on the other side of the dating agency, we can work with, you know, corporate South Africa and people that have got opportunity or vacancies within their organizations as they navigate towards the future. If we can be that matchmaking agency and be a guiding light as a pathway manager for young people, then that's what we pour all of our energy into. And that can be anything from an entry-level retail job all the way through to where we're talking about today in this Workforce 2.0, where you know, employees of the future, you know, need to have some sort of digital thinking or some sort of digital skill behind them in what they want to do. So that's Harambee, and we took a conscious view that digital was a gap in South Africa that we needed to look at very carefully. We also heard anecdotal evidence in the market saying things like, you know, 4IR is going to replace all the jobs, fourth industrial revolution, where the machines will take over anything that's automated or that can be automated, and things like, you know, we have better skills overseas at more competitive sort of rates. So these sort of skills end up in India and North America and other places, not in South Africa. And that we're missing, you know, hundreds of thousands of jobs, of skills in South Africa to fill these sort of vacancies. So we decided, you know, in about 2018 to really think about, let's unpack digital. What does it look like? What does it mean? Let's think about, you know, very, very carefully what the status quo is in South Africa. Is it as bad as it looks? Where should we be investing our time? What does it mean to go digital as an organization, and where do you find the skills to do so? And then actually on the ground, is it, you know, what are the skills that are missing? What are the skills of the future that we should be thinking about as far as the CEOs or business leaders are concerned? We wanted to hear from them as well. And then moving into what we'll cover today, and what we really want to land today is just to give, you know, people some practical things to think about in their own organizations, to say, these are, you know, this comes from, you know, these business leaders' mouths. These are the gaps they're seeing. These are the skills of the future they're seeing. You know, what are the three things we can think about when preparing for the future of work, whether we're taking on new people or we are reskilling our current workforces in South Africa? So we started this, and I'll just quickly go through the unpacking of the notion of digital. You know, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes on what this thing is. If we think about, and Capterra is a great a site to look at software and compare other sorts of software providers on, and the stat that I sort of pulled out of there recently was the one statistic on the left there, the 52% of organizations that responded to their recent survey said that, you know, they had an unplanned software purchase before the crisis. They didn't even think they needed something, and when this crisis emerged, they emergency purchased the software. And you can think of the Zooms and the Microsoft Teams and these sorts of things, and you can see how quickly people have sort of moved into it in your own organizations or friend circles, and you can start to believe that. And if you added the 10% next to it, which is they had planned purchases before the crisis, but they were stalling on them as soon as the crisis hit, they had to pay as well. So 60% of these engaged organizations have literally in the last 8 months bought the pieces of software that enable the new world that they live in now. And these are the catalysts that COVID has sort of created as far as digitization goes. It's digitization for us is any sort of medium or any sort of solution or any sort of process that turns to a mobile or some sort of computer avenue when servicing a customer or servicing a business process. So we then partnered with our partners at Microsoft who now own LinkedIn around about the 2018, and this came from the digital landscape of South Africa skills, and was really, really insightful. It really got us thinking about making the right investments into this thinking. And we started to ask, the questions like, what does LinkedIn define as a digital skill? We've got a 7 million network on LinkedIn in South Africa, so a professional network of about 7 million. It's on par with the rest of sort of the countries as far as a per capita number goes. And we started to look at it and say, what do they find as digital on their network, and who's got a digital skill in South Africa? And you can see people's differing opinions of what these kind of roles, or what these kind of skills could be, and you can start to unpack and group them. Everything from digital marketing and assisting on reaching customers digitally, all the way through to middleware integration, software engineering, software testing, and those sorts of things that we all know about, and then all the way through to the new things that people are talking about, which is like artificial intelligence and machine learning and these sorts of things, but really encompassing some sort of skill set in one of these sort of tags on LinkedIn's network. Now the interesting thing was, like, how many people in South Africa have these skills, and there's around about 500,000, and you can express that as a percentage of our 50 million, and you can start to see how lacking we may be when compared next to the US, the UK, or India. US 15 out of their 300 million is have a digital skill. Everyone in an organization is learning about something, learning about some sort of micro credential, as we call them, and is training in this digital space. And you can see, although we're growing at sort of 10%, we're far behind India's investments when they're growing at sort of 20%. Here's the supply and demand look back in 2018 that we looked at as well, and we started to look at this and say, across all of these capabilities, these digital capabilities, what are the capabilities that are required most? What are the what's in good supply, what's in bad supply, and how does it all look? And you can start to see the new age things over here, the big data and artificial intelligence, the big buzzwords of the digital community at the moment. Yes, they are in decent supply, but the size of the circle indicates the demand for the service. And you can start to see that the traditional sorts of things like web development, digital marketing sits in here, data analytics, and things that have been around for quite a while. Those are the things that are in high demand at the moment, and are also in very bad supply. And you can see like 80% of what the demand requires sort of doesn't get met. So around about 17.5% supply rate against the demand is in these large required capabilities. So that painted a picture for us and started to unlock a picture that said, maybe there is a supply issue, but what does it really look like, and what do we need? Another big scary thing, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but for every professional we train in South Africa with a digital skill, we lose 2.5 of them to overseas. And that was a very scary thought for us as well, especially in a 30% unemployment country like South Africa. Not going to spend too much time on this either, but the information technology and services, who are the biggest employers of these? And obviously the technology providers are, but the normal suspects like financial services, marketing, advertising, telecommunications all consume many of these capabilities or roles within their organizations. And then the last thing to just look at before we jump into the real good stuff is, we found out back then that even though there's that supply wasn't meeting the demand within that graphic I just showed everyone just now, about 60% of all professionals that are on the LinkedIn, that are in jobs and on the LinkedIn platform, like 5 years or more experience, and that was a big key insight as well. Although we're not keeping up, it seems like organizations aren't hiring entry-level people as well. And so we started to unpack that as well. So now, we looked at all of those. That's kicked off sort of the thinking of like, how should South Africa prepare our organizations to be a little bit more competitive, and how do we think about how do we think about skills required now, the next year, and into sort of 5 years into the future, that'll hold us in good stead to digitize our organizations, stay competitive, and these sorts of things. And so we wanted to sort of weed out all of the anecdotal evidence and the hearsay about, what are the skills of the future. Again, you can do a cursory glance on Google, and you'll find a whole bunch of opinion pieces on deep learning and machine learning and AI and all these sorts of things that are going to power organizations forward. But actually, what are the South African business leaders saying? And so we went to market, and we spent the last 8 months, around about the time I met you, Juanita, in sort of April, May sort of time period. And we decided we needed to know at a granular level in South Africa, what are the biggest issues, barriers, where are we as far as skills go, how competitive are we overseas, etc. And so we went in and we interviewed 102 companies around South Africa, across 15 different industry verticals. We interviewed, the heads of business and business leaders in the HR departments, but also the CTOs, CIOs, etc. So we could understand, these very key insights that came out of this. And just for everyone, I encourage you to go and read this report. We've worked with Digital Council, IITPSA, and a whole bunch of other contributors into this report. And it's very, very detailed and in-depth, and it's a great guiding light as far as where we should be investing as South Africans in this problem. But the key insights, just to talk through them, I'm not going to go through key insight one. I'll go through those in the next slides, because that's going to talk to Workforce 2.0 for you, hopefully, and just like really unpack what kind of jobs or vacancies are missing in corporate South Africa at the moment. But just to say that, the rest of the key insights that we'll just look at here, the top in the demand vendor certifications. We're starting to look at the hyperscaler certifications, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, Amazon Cloud practitioners. Those are the people that are in massive need within organizations as they start to adopt these new cloud practices and cloud platforms. Insight number 3, great insight as well that came out of this very in-depth, very detailed diagnostic. Micro-credentials ranked number 1 as far as how people were going to train their own employees or reskill their employees. Not sending people back to universities, for example. The other one was, we know that especially in digital and the way that things are moving so quickly, we have to adopt lifelong learnings. There's no 2-3 year degrees anymore that you can go away with, and the world has stayed the same. You need to invest in this lifelong learning. And then big one, 70% of everyone we looked at, around about 70%, were outsourcing digital work to foreign countries. So you can start seeing the effects of it. 9 billion out of the people that we looked at, 9 billion is lost in export revenue for these services. Conversely, the nice part is that South African companies are also providing services for 55% of them that we interviewed to foreign countries as well, which is very, very, very cool as well. We should be encouraging more of that. And then our biggest one here, we extrapolated the numbers. We looked at the SARS figures to do the extrapolation. And we think there's an opportunity for around 66,000 jobs in South Africa next year that are vacant. 44,000 or 60% of them are actually suitable for young people. And I'll talk about those roles now, because that's the point of this exercise. But that's a big number that we have to meet next year. And we've got to find ways of meeting those numbers. So just quickly, the most in-demand entry-level jobs didn't include data scientists and these buzzwords, or IT specialists and these sorts of things, and machine learning things. Yes, they feature on the data set, but what do we need young people to do, or graduates, or young people who've gone through digital academies? What do we need them to do? Traditional desktop support technician, and making sure the Zoom and the 365 is working so that business is enabled. And that was a key insight here. There's nothing new to that, but an emphasis that needs to be played on the investment as a country we make in these sorts of things, because in junior levels they completely enable the business, and they're also a soft landing for young people into these organizations. when you move up into the intermediate job roles, we start to see, cybersecurity coming through as people migrate, organizations migrate to the cloud, and we start to see mid-level software developers. So very specifically supporting code that they may have created within their organization. And you start to see that those roles being most in demand in the intermediate sort of job role, which is 5 years experience or more. Data analysis, big data analysis, and those things start to come out as well. And then obviously in the leadership spaces, you start to see project management and your solutions architects and your ICT engineer at a C level starting to come through, and as well as product ownership in UX and UI design. So again, you can see a great mix, but not necessarily the jobs of the future that people are had or picture in their minds. They are the enablement, traditional enablement sorts of roles that we need to be encouraging pathwaying of these young people, or reskilling of current people in our organizations. And then just to move on to the future. So we talk about the future as well. What does the future look like? These are the predictions of the people we interviewed. So the leaders in South Africa, and software development engineer, number one. There's our big one on the hyperscaler side, cloud specialists and architects. We know that we need to be consuming these really cool technologies on the cloud, but we need a cloud specialist to help us move there. Cybersecurity comes up again. As we're starting to consume different platform technologies, we need to start thinking about security in a much holistic sort of way. Enterprise architects and everything else comes out in here as well. So these are the next 5 year predictions of our teams as well. The most in demand vendor skills required. Another great look at where are people thinking about the software as a service solutions? Where do they value people with certifications from most? And you can see there's no surprises in Microsoft and Amazon, who own a lot of the workflow and desktop sort of software as a service type solutions, all the way through to Cisco, Oracle, SAP, and Salesforce. Again, all providing these sorts of solutions. So the support that goes behind these solutions is massively important. Again, it's telling the same story. Just on what types of certifications we should be thinking about as we move to these new digital platforms. Again, I encourage everyone to just go through the main report, which we'll share. But just to look at when we think about jobs and roles of the future, people in marketing and people in sales and all over the organization, including finance, should be thinking about upskilling themselves in things like the Google or Microsoft data science type work, so that they can build and model certain things on these great platforms, because this is what the sort of market is telling us, where the market is telling us it's going. And then just lastly, how do organizations prepare themselves to and prepare the right people for this? And that goes a long way into saying, universities alone, even though we've got 26 public universities in South Africa, we can't lean on them alone to provide these sorts of courses. And when we talk about moving along and reskilling and these sorts of things, we need to be very clear in how we support both people that exist in our organizations, as well as skills development structures and partners in actually training the courses that or training for the vacancies that we know we'll have as we grow our organizations. And you'll start to see micro-credentialing, something we've been scratching our heads over forever, is coming out tops, with ongoing continuous learning coming out second. The leaders in South Africa are finally realizing, I think, that we can micro-credential on online courses using vendor-based sort of certifications, and we can start to trust. I think the most important thing is we can start to trust that the young people or the reskilled people within our organizations, once they go on those courses and they invest in themselves, they're just as capable as the filter that we find in a university degree or qualification. And so you can start to see a little bit of a change in how we interpret that. And then I suppose just to the the conclusions, I really wanted to leave people and, listeners to leave them with sort of 3 practical thoughts or conclusions to think about when preparing for this next 5 years, for example. And I didn't say longer than 5 years because things change so much that I think if we can get, 5 years ahead of us and plan just 5 years or even a year, it'll hold us in good stead. And so taking into everything that we've learned in this, the skills project that we've gone to market with, that you can read in detail at some point, everything we've learned over the sort of last 3 years in skilling in the digital academies we try and co-create and work with and source from, all the way through to sort of where we are today and trying to find out ways to help employers to take on young excluded but also inexperienced youth into their digital teams or their organizations. These are the 3 things, practical things that I think everyone can put in their toolbox when preparing, whether they're from HR, whether they're from the C-level suite, or whether they're working in their marketing department. These are the sorts of 3 things you can think about in digital when preparing for the future of work. So the first one is to really look at people's roles in a different way, or the digital roles in a different way, to be more specific. I think, like everything you've heard, is we think that the roles sit within the software development and the data modeling and data scientist side. But actually what we found is the roles in digital, when we talk about, as a role within an organization and a digital role, what we found is more of a pyramid. And again, it's like the old 80-20 principle, where actually, 80% of all the sort of requirements right now, moving into 1 or 2 years from now, sit within the base of this pyramid. And those are support roles. Buy 365 licenses and make sure that the desktop and the software are working for everyone in the organization. Buy Google App Support, or Google for Work, I think it's called. And make sure that it's working for everyone so that they can work from home and the office. And it's basically support for software as a service type stuff that you buy off the shelf. I suppose the next level up from that is configuration. So think about any SAP or any 365 or any of these software as a service things that you might have bought, and just think about the first customization you expect someone to make on it, or the first configuration you make on it that's not like that makes it not off the shelf anymore. And I think that's probably the sort of second level in the pyramid, and where we should be investing sort of in those roles as well, because it's not like software development, it's more like configuring things to suit our business practice or role or process. And then lastly, right now, I'm thinking about creation type roles. So when you have to create something, create a piece of software, create a data model, or create some sort of product design, that sort of sits at that top percent, and where people own various pieces of software or software stacks. And so, these proportions might not be exactly right, but what we're seeing is that we should be thinking about this in our organizations as we enable each of those levels, support what we've got, config where possible, and then create only where necessary if it's a piece of software that's a competitive advantage to your organization, for example. The second big takeout is we have to take charge of our own or our company's learning journey. We can't leave it to the existing systems. We have to support the existing systems. But just, as I said earlier, there's 26 universities, but they're only producing at the moment, 2,000 to 4,000 computer science graduates per year. So it's a very, very small number. And if you think about trying to address the 66,000 gap we have next year, just next year, but based on our estimations, you can see how difficult it's going to be to catch up. And so I just encourage everyone to think through, what does micro-credentialing mean? What does it mean to send people on the licensed version of Coursera or these sorts of online platforms? What does it mean to for a 6-month course for finance to do data modeling? And so these are the things that we need to start thinking about, like, very carefully, as well as navigating the difficulties within the hiring sort of processes. So we need to start thinking about ability versus qualification on a certificate as indicators of success within our teams. And then just looking to what the hyperscalers like Google, Oracle, Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure, looking to what those certifications are, because they represent an international sort of eye into the sort of best practices, best tools, best open source, and best APIs, on the planet. And if they've got various certifications around these platforms or tools, we should be looking at those things and looking at the micro credentials around them that people are using to supplement, the traditional computer science graduates that we work with the universities as well. And then just to finish off and say, the last sort of insight, or the last tool, I suppose, is to look at change as the only constant, and for organizations to continue to be like truly adaptable. We don't know what the next computer language is going to be, or the next big thing is going to be as far as digital goes. But what we do know is that we can prepare both young people entering our workforce 2.0 and living within our organizations in a successful way. We do know that if you train for the right types of people, and you give them the ability and the resources to think, to be problem solving, and if they can be logic and be praised for the logic that they bring into the organization, they can train themselves on anything. And so it's within this adaptability that I think in our workforces we need to be very adaptable and supportive where the market changes so quickly. So with that, I know we're a little bit out of time. Just to say thank you for listening, and Juanita, I think I'm gonna just pause there.
Thanks, Tim. That's really, yeah. Look, I mean, I've worked through the document substantially. Obviously, provided some inputs into the document as well. And every time when we have this conversation, it just like completely boggles my mind about, I suppose it's torn between the immense concern that I've got for the lack of skills that we've got, but also like completely flabbergasted by this opportunity that we've got to start really, preparing people, for these jobs and to take their seats, at these jobs. So, yeah, phenomenal. Looking forward to giving you this platform to talk about this immensely important topic. And thanks for your time, and thanks to yourself and Arambi and everybody that's doing such a phenomenal job on highlighting just what's available.
Thank you, Juanita, and Digital Council, and thank you to everyone. Yeah.